Make a statement and I'll videotape you. Why not? I organized it.
Good evening. We're gathered here tonight to remember Mickey. Chazal tell us that there's a mitzvah on the mace to be forgotten from the heart. So what are we doing? Are we trying to defy Chazal, to deny the mace's mitzvah? No. The dead will be forgotten whatever we do. We're here to remember the living. Mickey's body may have died, but Mickey still lives on through us. Don't we all still see him standing there with his big smile and his happy voice saying a kind word or a joke when we need encouragement? Or feel the hand he holds out to us in times of need? The list is endless, but I'm only here to make introductions. Instead of gathering to remember, we are coming together to be reunited with Mickey. There are two kinds of reunions, one at which people recount memories and anecdotes from the past to elicit a tear or a smile, and those where people come just to be together with one another. Tonight, we come just to be together. We will not be hearing much about Mickey. Instead, we will be spending time in his presence. We will now hear a few words about Mickey from his wife, Mrs. Danny Klein.
Good evening. Rabbanim, family and friends. We've gathered here tonight to commemorate Mickey's second Yahrtzeit, which falls on the first day of Hanukkah, tomorrow night. Last year, I discussed the aspect of Achdus and the love of one's fellow man, which was such an inherent part of Mickey's nature, of how he brought worlds together by not judging another person, and how Ahavas Habrios was such a fundamental part of Mickey's makeup. This year, I would like to focus on the spiritual aspect of Mickey's life and our spiritual response to his passing away. To most people, Mickey seemed as if he had both feet firmly planted on the ground. However, there was a spiritual side of his character that I was privileged to share. On a daily basis, he would return from his Chavruta Shiur with Rabbi Natan Lopez Cardozo, with a glow shining forth from his face and an aura emanating from his being. It was only after Rabbi Cardozo's shiur given at Mickey's Shloshim, discussing the sugya pertaining to Elisha ben Avuya, more commonly known as Acher, that I understood from whence the glow emanated. He would be itching for the next day to dawn in order to get back to his Chavruta, and when on his travels, he would tell me how he missed learning the Chavruta. Following our engagement, the original plan had been to live in Australia. However, with some gentle persuasion, promoting the advantages of living in Eretz Yisrael, we married and settled here. When our children were born, Mickey would tell me time and again what a zechus the boys had to be born in Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh. His favorite time of the day was dawn, watching the sun rise, giving birth to a new day, and being witness to the reconfirmation of Maaseh Bereshis. His wish to fulfill his task as a Kohen and have the boys join him in the Avodah of the Beis HaMikdash was a future that he yearned for in the present moment. Mickey was a regular visitor in the court of the Belzer Rebbe, thanks to his wide circle of friends, which included two of the Rebbe's Shomashim. He took photos of the events, especially at the Simchas Beis HaShoeva. The Shamash told me of how they would go there to receive a bracha from the Rov. They would enter the sukkah, a sea of black streimelach and kapotas, which suddenly parted in front of him as he walked towards the Rebbe, with Mickey at his side, the only person present wearing a colour other than black and white, his famous blue shirt. Thursdays, a day that began at 3 a.m., delivering juice in Bnei Brak, then volunteering in Ezra Lamarpeh, and returning to Jerusalem with the next round of deliveries, Mickey would come home, and after settling the boys into bed, would shower and change, and would then go to Rav Gamliel Rabinovich's Tish for more brachas and insights into spirituality, and of course the Rebbitzins' famous Parva Cholent. One of his favorite pastimes was chazanas. Whilst living in Los Angeles, he had studied under a chazan, and from then on became a sought-after Baal Tefillah. Many nights after Mariv upstairs in this shul, he would spend time discussing chazanas with the local chazan and father of his close friend. Mickey had a beautiful voice and was often complimented on his davening. Even so, he would always ask me if his davening had been acceptable. The memories are endless, and on a daily basis, little things jerk the memory back into action. However, as I've learned and experienced from my vital widow support group, HaKadosh Baruch Hu bestows upon us the chesed of shichacha, so that the pain of loss and the memories become somewhat dulled in order to resume living after the terrible experience of such a loss. Initially, especially during the first year, I literally felt as if Mickey was still at home with us, as if I could speak out loud and a response would hang there between us. However, as time passes on and the neshama passes through the different stages, we grow further away from the patira and tend to start relying on spiritual connections. Music is a means of tapping into our spiritual essence, and this was Mickey's call. On our trips to Manchester, he would slip away in the evenings to Uncle Mike's house to sit and listen to the nigunim and folk stories that are Mike's trademark, and to hum along the tunes of the Baal Shem Tov and others, and be enthralled by the stories of the Kotzker Rebbe, one of Mike's favorites. It is for this reason that I asked Mike Tabor, otherwise known as Uncle Mike, to join us for this evening. His repertoire of Jewish soul music is a celebration of the Jewish spirit, and while we sit here listening and enjoying, awakening our souls from the humdrum of everyday life, you can be rest assured that Mickey will be here with us, humming along to Mike's repertoire of the tunes that Mickey knew so well and loved so much. I would like to take this opportunity of thanking Rabbi Natan Lopez Cardozo, our mentor and champion, who has stood by our side in the ordeal of the last 2 years, through the ups and the downs. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless him and his family with good health and Bekol Tov always. My thanks also to Larry Pfeffer, Leah and Yermi Newlander, whose tireless efforts in arranging the publication of the book available here tonight brought it to fruition, and to Dr. Maury Bank and Dr. Les Glassman, who published it. Also to my sister-in-law, Mickey's sister Debbie, her husband Asa and son Rafi, who joined us all the way from Manchester. My everlasting gratitude to our friends who in the absence of family have become our family, and finally to my family, who have literally toiled to enable us to keep moving forward even in the darkest hours. At this time of the year, Hanukkah, the Festival of Lights, may we be zoicha to see the light and to tip the balance in the favor of spirituality over Gashmius. May we emerge triumphant as were the Maccabim in our fight for Jewish survival and sovereignty over our land. May we gain spiritual uplifting from the musical experience of this evening, and may Mickey gain Eloi Neshama from the learning of this gathering. We'll be going up to Mickey's kever tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, and we'll have a minyan for Mariv at home tomorrow evening before candle lighting at 5:15. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Mrs. Klein, for your uplifting words and for helping us to relive Mickey, and ask Rabbi Cardozo to give a shir Leilei Nishmasoi.
Shoot, Rabbanim, all of you, Daniela. Let me start by saying that I feel again privileged to be able to speak tonight when we think about our great friend, Mickey, our great tzaddik, Mickey. As you know, I had the opportunity to learn with him, especially the last months of his life and he was suddenly taken away from us. And as Daniela just mentioned, it was indeed, not just for him, but also for me, always a very special experience. We were learning a Sukya in the Gemara, but on the end of the hour we were discussing everything which somehow was related to that Sukya, basically traveling throughout the world, the Jewish world, the Gentile world, putting things together so that we had a larger picture which both of us loved so much. Before I will speak about this topic more carefully, I just want to mention, just only for a moment, how impressed I am with Mickey's wife, Daniela. For me, she's a hero, the way how she made her ways, how she established her life, continued to live with Mickey in his spirit, and how a fantastic personality she is in the way how indeed she is an example to all of us. And we thank you for that, Daniela. Friends, it was just mentioned before that one of the most special midot of Mickey was his smiling face. Always in a good mood and always looking for the higher worlds. He was a businessman, he was involved in very material matters, but to him that had a totally different meaning than it has to most of us. There was something about him, in all sincerity, which stood out, and which I still see at this hour, at this moment in front of me, when I think about him and how we used to sit opposite each other at our table at home and discuss all these matters, which are far beyond, let's say, the material world in which we normally need to live. And it's about that matter that I want to say a few words tonight, which I think will, in many ways, tell us who Mickey was. Because one of his great midot was that he was able to enjoy every second of his life. There was never with him, as far as I knew him, anything where he was waiting for a moment to enjoy his life. It was taking place now, achshav. And he was fully involved in that. And because of that reason, he looked to this world differently than most of us do. It's tremendous art to do this. To be able, even in the most difficult moments, to enjoy life. To take every moment, somehow to cut it out, to make it to stand on its own, and then to look to it and to say, what a marvelous moment. What a moment of tremendous niflaot, of nitzim, of miracles. If you can walk through life like that, then you have done something very special, which I can say that I'm very jealous of. To be able to do that. Not to wait for something, but to enjoy it and to be with it now. And that is what I want to focus on tonight. And I will do that in relationship to something which we do, and especially do on Shabbat. And that is the art of walking. The art of walking. To be able to walk in this world. And what I mean is this. Most of the days in which we live today, in the world of technology, which is surrounding us, and which we rely on, very few people still walk. We drive. We fly. Walking became something very exceptional. The world around us nearly does not do anything at all anymore like that. But we choose to. There's one day in the week where we must walk. Because the car is not available. Because the aeroplane is not available. And that's obviously Shabbat. On Shabbat, we learn how to walk. But the question is, what is walking? What is actually happening when we do so? What can we learn from Mickey when he walked through his life? And when I think of this, I think of another strange thing about us Jews walking. We speak about the wandering Jew, always on the road, able to hold up against the most difficult moments of anti-Semitism. And somehow to continue, which no doubt all of them did, to continue to live and to enjoy that Jewish life. But there's something about Shabbat and the walking of Shabbat, which badly enough, and I say this deliberately, we do not very much experience here in Eretz Israel. And that's because we are spoiled. And that is that the way in which we walk here in Eretz Israel on Shabbat is different than we do in many other places throughout the world. Because nearly everywhere outside Israel, with a few exceptions, when we walk, we are told that we can only walk and we cannot carry. We cannot take something with us in our hands. Unless there is an eruv, which here in Israel is the normal phenomenon. Outside Israel, it's a constant reminder that walking is something very special, which I believe we should not lose here in Eretz Israel, when we have this opportunity which we are so used to that we can even carry in the streets. But somewhere, because of that reason, we miss a tremendous opportunity. And I will try to explain what I think that means. I don't have to tell you. One is not allowed to carry on Shabbat. It's one of the Lametet Melachot, one of the 39 prohibitions in the Torah. And it's very interesting to note that the largest part of the Gemara discussing the Hilchot of Shabbat is about the prohibition to carry. Extremely complicated. What and how. And obviously even more complicated is the way how you build an eruv, which makes it possible again for us to carry. All complicated. Anybody who has learned Gemara knows exactly what I'm speaking about. But we do know that carrying has absolutely nothing to do with something being heavy. I can't even carry my handkerchief. I can't carry the most lightest object. All what I can carry is myself. All that what belongs to me as far as my garments is concerned, and perhaps a little bit of jewelry, that's all what I'm allowed to take into the Reshut HaRabim, into the open court, into the public domain. But for the rest, not my handkerchief, not my talit, not as anything else I can take with in the public domain. It has to stay at home. What does this mean? What is the Torah trying to tell us over there? I once said to my students, and I want you to remember that, the Jewish tradition is a remarkable tradition. And one of its most remarkable things is that it will find a problem for every solution. It will find a problem for every solution. Anything which is normal in this world, anything what is day-to-day experience, becomes a halachic issue with us. Suddenly there are all sorts of conditions. One of them indeed is walking on Shabbat. You can't just walk like the rest of the world walks. Because walking has to take place, carefully taking into account that I cannot take anything with me except my garments. And nothing more than that. Let me try to explain what I think this means. And by that I will explain, I believe, a midah of our great Mickey, Yahrtzeit. There is a pasuk in the Torah which has seemingly nothing to do with this, but it gets right into the issue. In the beginning of the Bereshit, in the creation chapter, we read about all the different things which have been created by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then in the middle we read the following words. Vayomer Elohim, and God spoke, and he said that She ha'aretz deshe esef. Let the earth bring forth grasses, Masria zera, with seed, and then it says, Ve'etz pri ose pri le minon. And it should also bring forth a fruit tree, which will bring forth fruit le minon, in accordance to its kind. So it says. That is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying when he introduces this creation. I want to create something which is a pri, which is an eitz pri, ose pri. It is a fruit tree which is producing fruit. But Rashi in his commentary here tells us that when you look a little later in the Psukim, after the event, after the creation, that something went wrong, if that's the right word. Because a little later the Torah tells us that in fact the tree, the fruit tree, is no longer called eitz pri or se pri le minon. It is no longer called a fruit tree which produces a fruit in according to its kind. It only says that God created the fruit tree, or the tree which brought about fruit. But it does no longer say the fruit tree which gave birth to fruit. Says Rashi like this. What is the meaning of the words eitz pri or se pri le minon? And Rashi answers, Sheyehei tam ha'etz ketam ha'pri. It means to say that when we in English translate the word a fruit tree which produces fruit, obviously there's a redundancy here. And the answer says, Rashi, it means the following. It means to say that the tree itself has the same taste as the fruit. It is not just the fruit, the orange, the apple. When I taste it, I will then taste the fruit like an apple or an orange. But when I taste anything else from that tree, the leaf, the wood, whatever it is, and I will put it into my mouth, I will have exactly the same ta'am. I have exactly the same kind of taste that I would have from the fruit itself. The whole tree is the fruit. That's the meaning behind it. But says Rashi that afterwards, when we look to what actually happened, we will find that that was no longer the case. And Rashi brings a midrash which says that, and I shall not go into this now, the fruit tree did not listen to the commandment of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to stay a fruit tree, to produce fruit. It just became a tree. And it just produced fruit. The tree did no longer have the same taste as the fruit, like our trees today. Rashi then continues and says that that had something to do with some kind of a punishment, and obviously we can only take that in the allegorical sense of the word. But there is a difference here between, hear well what I say, between the ideal and what actually happened. Between what the world should be all about and what actually came of this world. The world should have been a place where every fruit has the very same taste as the tree, or the tree as the fruit. But what happened, in fact, is that that no longer came about, it never came about. The reality about this world is different than what it should have been. The reality of this world is different from what it should have been. And we need to understand what that means. Which takes me to walking. Professor Yehuda Gelman, good friend of mine, a great thinker, once reminded me, lahavdil, that in Chinese philosophy there is a concept called walking. And in that particular statement of Chinese philosophy, and Chinese philosophers were great philosophers at the time, there is something which no doubt our Chazal are alluding to. They speak about walking. And they tell us, for example, like this, that there are really two kinds of walking in this world. And if I would have to translate it in today's language, I would say, there is walking and there is walking to something. And if you know German, or if you know a little bit of Yiddish, then you know there's another word for walking. Spazieren. Spazieren means to say, I'm just walking without any goal. I do not need to go anywhere. I'm strolling around. It may be in a circle. That's walking. On the other side, if I'm walking to something, I'm no longer spazieren. I'm not busy in strolling. I have to get somewhere. That's the goal of my walking. My walking is purely the means to get to that place. But spazieren is not like that. Spazieren means to say that every step which I take is the very goal itself. I don't need to get anywhere. I enjoy the second, every moment that I'm walking. That's the difference. In Chinese philosophy, Lahavdil, it therefore, for example, says that mountains are walking. What does it mean that mountains are walking? Mountains means to say, not that they are literally walking, but they just are. They don't need to get anywhere. Their very existence is what they are all about. That's the meaning of walking. It doesn't mean physically walking. It means to say, I am what I am, and what I'm doing is all what there is, and that's the ultimate purpose. That's spazieren. One can walk, and one can walk too. The difference is enormous. The difference goes right to the midah of Mickey. Mickey used to walk. He never walked to something. Not that he didn't have to get somewhere, like we all do. But there was also a kind of walking taking place. And to explain that, let's go back for a moment to this pasuk. What is the difference between saying that the fruit tree produces fruit and a tree which produces fruit? If we are speaking about the tree, that is what ultimately happens in reality, then it means to say that the tree is only there to produce the fruit. It is a means to the fruit. It carries the fruit, the orange. It carries the apple. If we would ask what is the purpose of this tree, we would answer the purpose of this tree is to produce an apple or an orange. That's the tree we know of. But that was not the original intention. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu called on to his creation to produce trees, he says, I want them to be fruit trees, who are also, by the way, producing fruit. Says Rashi, what is the meaning behind that? The meaning is that the fruit, or better the tree, is not just there so that it ultimately will produce throughout a particular part of the year that particular apple or orange, and for the rest it is only there to wait till the moment that it is able to produce it again. No, it is not a means at all. The tree itself is the purpose. It has the ta'am. It has the very taste of that specific fruit, because the fruit is not only found in that fruit, it is also found in the tree. So now we have a different kind of tree. The tree which we have is the very ultimate goal. It is no longer the means. And that is exactly what I said before. The tree is walking. It is not walking to, because that would only be a tree. But the fruit tree, as it is understood here in our Chumash, is a tree which has its purpose not just in the very fact that it produces that piece of fruit, but every second of that particular existence of that tree is a purpose in itself, because it already has the ta'am. It has already got the taste of what ultimately that fruit tree also has to produce, or the fruit has to produce, and there is no difference between the fruit and the tree. That's the difference between walking and walking to. And that, my dear friends, is an enormous difference. Because the question in life indeed is, how do we deal with life? How do we live our lives? Are we walking to? And we perhaps consider a good part of our lives to be wasted. But we need to do so because we have to get there. And there's no other way getting there but moving myself to that particular point. Or am I able to say that the walking itself becomes the ultimate object? As much as on the end I may have to get the object somewhere, but the truth about it is my enjoyment of the very walking, the spazieren, the strolling around, is just, if not greater, than the ultimate goal where I have to be on the end of the day. My dear friends, if you can live in your life walking instead of walking to, then you are living in Gan Eden. Then you live in the paradise. Because ask yourself one question. What happened in the paradise? Before Adam Arishon made this mistake of eating from that tree, which by the way Chazal tells us, was a tree which also had as its very fruit, its same time as the tree, and the tree as the fruit. Before that time, everything was in place within that world of Gan Eden. Adam didn't have to go anywhere. He had the opportunity, the tremendous religious experience of constantly walking in the presence of God, and he was strolling. He was spazieren. He was just walking around, and every moment was another opportunity to somehow have an encounter with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That broke down a moment after he ate from that tree. When he removed that tree from the world, that tree which would have told him how to live his life, suddenly everything became a walking to. And therefore he was told that this place, Gan Eden, you can no longer stay. Because you have to learn now to live a life badly enough where you have to strive to get somewhere instead of already being there. Shabbat, Chazal tells us, is like Olam Haba. It is Gan Eden. If it is Gan Eden, it means to say that you're not allowed to walk to anything. If you look in the Shulchan Aruch, if you look in the Halacha, you will even find over there that when we do walk to shul, we should do it as a way of spazieren. We should enjoy the moment of walking to shul. The moment that I walk back, it is of a completely different nature. It is what we also call sometimes the Neshama Yetera, the other higher soul which suddenly takes us over and we experience something different. I don't know about you, but when I walk on Friday night into my home, in the front room, it looks totally different from the weekdays. I haven't moved any furniture, but it's all different. And that's exactly what it is all about. Because the moment that you enter into the world of Shabbat, there is no external anymore. I don't need to get anywhere. I am already there. And every move and every step I make is of a completely different quality. And that, my friends, in my opinion, is the reason why it is forbidden to carry on Shabbat. Because if I carry something, it means I have to get somewhere. It means to say I've got an object in my hand and I have to move it to the other place. Suddenly it is no longer the tree or the fruit tree which is producing fruit, but it's just the tree which is producing fruit. Chazal tell us, wait a moment, once in a week you need to go back to Gan Eden, to the Garden of Eden. There's one moment when you have to experience what Adam Arishon experienced before he ate from the tree. You have to walk in a way that every move which you make while you are walking in the Reshut HaRabim or the Reshut HaYachid must be done in a way that it itself became the ultimate goal. If you know German, and you know a little bit about secular philosophy, then you have heard about Immanuel Kant, one of the great German philosophers. He used to speak about, and there's no translation possible in English, das Ding an sich, which means the thing itself. Most of the time we don't have that. Most of the time we don't experience, because we're always trying to get somewhere, and most of the time, by the way, by the time we get there, we realize that we have to be somewhere else. Das Ding an sich is merely an experience that's no longer part of our lives. But if I would have to use Kant and put him into the Jewish tradition, I would have to say, Kant would say to us, you know what? Remember, Shabbat, that is das Ding an sich. It is the thing itself. It's the very being itself. And because of that, don't carry anything except yourself. As long as I take something with me, I'm still walking too. But the moment that I can take hold of myself, and for a moment I focus on myself and I say, all what there is to me is me. All what the experience is my experience. I am spazieren, I'm just strolling around to take notice of every second in my life as a tremendous joy, as a tremendous opportunity. Then I'm no longer able to carry. Then I should not carry, because ultimately that's what life is all about. The art in life is not to carry. The art in life is to carry just yourself and to take notice, to look somewhere in the mirror and to say, who am I? What am I all about? Why do I find myself in this unusual place called the world? And Shabbat, from Friday night till Motzei Shabbat, constantly reminds us of that. Let's not carry. Let's just carry myself. Let me create my life in such a way that there is no longer any walking to. There's just walking. The mountains walk. We have the Lametet Mulachot, the 39 kinds of work which we are forbidden to do on Shabbat. What is the meaning by that? I would say that the real reason behind that is obvious. If you're not allowed to do any grinding, writing, building, harvesting, all these 39 of them, we all know them, with all their rabbinical laws, whatever belongs to it, all of them are focusing on one thing, and that is to walk to. I need to produce something. I have to get somewhere. I'm a farmer, I must make sure that on the end of the day I get my harvest. I'm a businessman, I must be able to make this particular deal. I have to write things down, I have to do loads of things, but all these things are always seen from the perspective of, this is not the thing itself. I need to get somewhere, and I need to use these Lametet Mulachot to get there. And therefore the Torah says, no on Shabbat. Therefore it says, any illusion to it, any way by which we can prevent that, by which suddenly we are taking away these Lametet Mulachot and putting them aside, and suddenly I have the opportunity to say to myself, now that I can no longer do any of these Lametet Mulachot, you know what? I have a lot of free time. I have a lot of free space. The world makes an enormous mistake when it believes that freedom is by being constantly busy with all sorts of things to achieve them. The real kind of freedom is not what we want to do, but what we should be doing to make ourselves to understand who we are. That's, by the way, the reason why we find in the prophet, Im tashif mi Shabbat rachlecha. If you remove, as we say, turn away your foot on the Shabbat from pursuing your business, Bayom Kodshi vekarata le Shabbat onek, and you call that particular Shabbat a moment of tremendous enjoyment, and you're constantly busy trying to understand what that means, Astit anak al Hashem, then there is ta'anuk al Hashem. Then there is tremendous enjoyment, because then you have an encounter with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which so very many people are looking forward to and are not able to achieve. The Jew can achieve it if he understands what Shabbat is all about. To carry ourselves. On the other side, the great art, as Chazal tells us, is also that when we are in the weekdays busy with the Lametet Mulachot, we have to produce, we must be busy, we must make money, we must all do the things which after all makes this world to run. Then the question is, if you are able to take the Ruach, if you're able to take the spirit of Shabbat, where you learn to walk and not to walk to, it becomes possible that even when you do these lametet melachot, you do not just do them because on the end you have to have the harvest, but also because you enjoy the derech, the road to get to the harvest. Then it becomes walking itself again. Many, many years ago, I was once asked to speak at a sport event. And the sport event was consisting of a marathon, where the idea was obviously, by all the people who were enjoying this, that somebody had to run faster than everybody else. And the one who would be first, at the end, he would win and get the prize. So they asked me if I would say something to that particular person who ran in first. So I said to them, I'm prepared to do that, but I want you to know you probably will regret that you asked me to do so. And they regretted it. And I tell you why. I said the following to them. And you will understand now why I said that. The fellow who came in first, I said to him, I will not give you a mazel tov. As far as I'm concerned, you lost this particular marathon. And you know who was the one who won it? The one who came on the end, the last one. For me, he's the one who really made it. And I'll tell you why. You run so fast that while you were running, you got one thing in mind to get there first. Did you see anything on the road? Did you see the flowers? Did you see all the people standing on the side waving flags? Did you see all the other beautiful things which you passed by? You didn't see anything of that. Because only one focus you had in mind, that it is on the end to get there. You know what? You lost this particular marathon. If you didn't see anything on the way, can I tell you that you won? But the fellow who walked slower, he saw more than you. He probably saw some of the flowers. He probably saw some of the people standing on the side. He probably had a moment to look to the sky and see the sun or whatever it was. He took notice. So tell me who won? The fellow who walks through this life slowly wins. Because he saw more. He took in more. He realized that the very walking itself had a tremendous purpose. Nothing to do with the question who will end up the first. But my dear friends, we today live in a world where all of this is completely gone. The whole Western world is now running faster and faster and faster. I find myself once or twice a year in Manhattan. It's a fascinating place. No doubt. Especially when you come from such a small country like I come from in Holland. There's a little Amsterdam. Over at usually Jerusalem. It's very small. And when you walk around and you go to Fifth Avenue, you see the massive amount of people. They do not walk, they run. They run like crazy to get to all these different places. Everybody's very busy. And I tell you, I've never done it because I didn't want to get myself into great trouble, but I would like to stay or stand one day in the middle of Fifth Avenue or Broadway and suddenly tell all these people who are running, do me a favor, just sit down for a moment. And tell me something. What are you doing? And I tell you that the vast majority will look to me and say, yes, what am I doing? I'm running every day through Fifth Avenue, to Broadway, through all these different places, only to get somewhere. Did you see something on the road? Did you see the right things? Did you take notice of the beautiful people walking around there? Or whatever else there is? Or even the architecture of New York, which is very beautiful? You didn't see anything of that. My dear friends, that's not the way of living. Shabbat is a day of protest. Rabbi Norman Lamb, a good friend of mine, the head of the Yeshiva University, once said to me, there are only one people who can call themselves Protestants, and that's us. We are the Protestants of this world. We protest, that's the reason why they don't like us. Because constantly we disturb the world. We are constantly busy telling people, this is not the way to do this. This is not how you live your life. But we are a minority. And it's very hard for people even to grasp the idea, because we have also in our educational system moved ourselves so very far away from it, that when you speak in terms of walking, most people don't even know anymore what you're speaking about. We have lost that art. Im tashif mi Shabbat rachlecha. The Torah tells us, the Navi tells us, be able at least once a week to live. But it means one thing, don't carry. Just walk, spazieren. Let me deepen this out a little bit more. Because I really believe, in all honesty, that somewhere this was reflected in Mickey's personality. The opportunity, the incredible knowledge, intuition which he had to be able to walk. Even when he was very busy doing his business. He had a different perspective. And that was his smile, that was his whole way, how he looked to everything. In Parashat Bechukotai, it says like this. Im bechukotai telechu. If you walk in my chukot, in my laws. Veit mitzvotai tishmeru, and you keep my commandments. Va'asitim otam, and you keep them, look properly after them. Says the Torah a little later, very interesting. Ve'isik lachem dayish it batzir. Then you live your life like that. If you walk in my chukim, if you walk with my mitzvot, if you observe them, then at the time of the threshing shall reach until the moment of the vintage. Ubatzir yasik et hazara, and the vintage shall reach to the sowing time. Meaning to say that the Torah tells us there will be an enormous amount of bracha if you live in according to my commandments. You know what you find yourself in? That when you walk into your fields, you will find so much food over there that you don't really know what to do with it, because there's plenty enough, there's more you can deal with, and one particular harvest will overtake the second harvest, and on the end you will pile up more and more of all that food. So much the bracha will be. V'yashaftim la'beitach ba'artzchem, and you shall live in your country in great security. V'achaltem lachmachem le'sova, and you shall eat your bread in great satisfaction. Asks Rashi, obvious. Is the meaning to say that on the end of the day there will be so much harvest that most of it we will have to throw away? Because there's no way how we can eat it all. How can that be a bracha? And therefore Rashi comes up in according to the Midrash with another interpretation. It says it doesn't mean that there was more food than at any other year or at any other time. It means ochil kim'ah, says Rashi. It means a person would only eat kim'ah a little, v'hu mitbarech b'me'af, and he would be blessed in his me'af, in his stomach. He would only eat very little, a few grams of something, and he already would feel fulfilled. He already feels satisfied. That says Rashi what it means. It doesn't mean to say there was more. It just means to say that the quality, if you want to call it like that, of that food was such that by eating a little bit, you were already satisfied. And therefore, you ate only a little, and therefore there was always plenty enough. That is what happens when you keep the commandments of the Torah. But the famous great mashkiach of the Mir Yeshiva before the war, Rabbi Yerucham Meir, one of his famous Sifrei Musar, he says something very interesting over here. He says, it is not the quality, and I want you to hear this well, it is not even the quality of the food which makes the difference. Not the normal pshat in Rashi is that you eat a little and that's it. No, says Rabbi Yerucham Meir. It means something else. It is not the quality of the food, but it is the quality of the man. The kind of person, the mentality of that person is the one which ultimately decides how much he needs to eat. And I translate for you in English. He writes, to be satisfied and happy is the greatest blessing bestowed on man. But such a blessing has absolutely no relationship to the amount of food or possessions which man happens to eat or to own. The Torah teaches, he says, us that when the people of Israel live in accordance with the requirements of the Torah, man will be blessed with a frame of mind. Hear this word, a frame of mind, in which a matter of possessions and food will take a very different dimension. our attitude, our hashkafa, the way how we look to food and to possessions will change mentally. And therefore, when we speak about eating a little, it doesn't mean to say there was something very special about that food. The food was the same food you and I eat. But my mentality, my way of looking to the whole material world, he says, changes as a result of me keeping the mitzvot properly. Once I keep the mitzvot in the way in which the Torah wants us to do, my whole perspective on life, my kisha on life, is so much different that all the things which now are terribly important, my possessions and the need for more of it, are no longer of any meaning at all. Why, my friends? Well, to come back to what I said before. If everything in life becomes a moment of enjoyment, if everything in life has its own meaning, das Ding an sich, then all the things which we are constantly striving for, and we need to have because we are told that without it we will not survive, suddenly will fall away. And that's probably what is going to happen in the days of the Mashiach. When we look back and we say, why were we so busy getting all these things? They're meaningless. And I do not mean to say by that that the Jewish tradition is completely opposing the material world. It is not. But I want us to realize that the way how we deal with the material world will very much depend on our mentality and not on what that material world actually is standing for or what it is able to offer us. What does the Torah say on Shabbat? Al yetzei adam mimekomo b'yom hashvi'i. A man shall not go out from his makom on the seventh day. And Chazal, the rabbis, in a very interesting way mean to say by that, they say what it means is that every person has his makom. A makom means to say, I am walking, and I'm not walking too. I am myself. And therefore on that particular day of Shabbat, I am not going mimekomo, from beyond that particular place, because that is who I am. Or if you want to say it a little different, you know that the word makom is always obviously also used for Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Hamakom, like we say in the Haggadah on Pesach. It means to say that there is a moment where Hakadosh Baruch Hu is all what there is, and therefore wherever I go, I walk in His presence, and the moment that I walk in His presence, I don't need to go anywhere. It is das Ding an sich. On the other side, when we read in the story of Cain and Abel, when he at a certain moment kills his brother, what does the Torah tell us? What is the great curse which the Cain gets by having killed his brother? He becomes a na-venat. Strange word. It means a mover. He's on the way. He never has menuchat hanefesh. The person who is busy with material matters has never menuchat hanefesh. Because by the time he gets to this particular place, he needs to go to another place. And he will never be satisfied. That's what the rabbis say. What say mea, what say ma'atayim. Yeshlo mea, what say ma'atayim. I always want more. Why? Because I am always walking too. But if you just would be spazieren, there wouldn't be such a quality. There wouldn't be such a problem. I am always in my own makom. I will always be in my own place. And I will never be a na-venat. But the moment that I take the life away from another human being, my mentality changes. Rabbi Dessler, Michtach Meliar, writes in great lengths about that. He says, the very fact that we allow today crime is not just the matter that we allow it and we don't put people into jail. It means to say that we allow something to happen. We haven't created a kind of a ruach in this world which makes it impossible for a person ever to dare to do something like that. If one person does something wrong, it reflects on the whole community. If the community would have been strong about it, he would not have dared to go and make that step. My friends, what it ultimately leads to is another dimension of Mickey's personality. Living in amazement. Constantly being amazed by what is surrounding you. I heard this many times from him in many different ways, and we used to discuss that. There's a pasuk, very interesting, in Yahrtzeit, which speaks about the days when the third temple, the third Beit HaMikdash is being built. Says Yahrtzeit said like this. He's speaking there in a nevuah. in a prophecy. And he says, and on the Moadim, on the festivals, when the Amei Haaretz came before Hashem, whoever enters, hear this, by the northern gate, by the Shar HaTzafon, to bow low, when he walked into the Beit HaMikdash, he had to bow, but he came in from one particular place, from the north gate, he would not be allowed to leave through the same gate again. He had to leave on the south gate. If he came from the north, he went to the south. If he went from the south, he went to the north. If he went from the west to the east, and east to the west. He was never allowed to go twice through the same shar, through the same gate. Asked Rabbi Yonatzon Eibeshutz in his Perush on Pirkei Avot, he says, why? What is the meaning behind it? Why are you not allowed to walk twice through the same gate? Mahanaf Kamina. What is the big difference? And he answers like this. He says, God, hear this, was particular that man should not see the same gate of the temple twice. You know why? Lest he see the gate as he sees the door of his house. If you see something twice, you have a problem. If you see something twice, it means that you did not look well. You didn't make the same mistake which the fellow made in a marathon. You're running and you don't take notice. This is an enormous problem. The Beit HaMikdash stands for the moment that man needs to be amazed with every second of his life. The whole wonder, the amazement, the miracle of life. And when you go twice through the same gate, you may fall victim to seeing the same place again twice. And there is in English, better than in also any other language, there is a fantastic way how we put that in terms which so much makes sense. Familiarity breeds contempt. Whatever is twice has already lost much of its meaning. The art is to see it every time for the first time. And Chazal tells us that the Amei Haaretz, the general population, were therefore not allowed to go twice through the same shar, so that they would not walk into the temple and walk out the same way, because the whole point of going to the Beit HaMikdash is that you would completely be transformed and walk out differently. And to make sure that therefore you would not see something twice, Chazal, or better, Yechezkel tells us, better go out through the other door, the other gate. Because there you will see something which you have never seen before. Because there's a problem. Familiarity breeds contempt. How difficult is this? If you walk two in this world, then you have a problem of familiarity breeds contempt. Then you don't see so many things, but you don't take notice. And the truth about it is that we see many things of which we never take notice. And I dare to say that after 120 years, when we go up there, they show us the same world as we have been, and then they will tell us, did you see this? You came by every day and you didn't see it? No, I didn't see it. How can that be? We know the answer. You know what I was busy with? I was walking too. And I was not walking. I was eating from a tree which was the wrong tree, because it was a tree which did not have the tam, kapri, like the tree itself. The greatness of being religious, and this is badly enough also forgotten in our own communities, is to live in constant amazement. All our tefillot, all the mitzvot, I would dare to say, are there to remind us one thing. Be amazed. Constantly be taken back by something. If it is a little bee, if it is a flower, if it is one particular move which you make, even when it is on Shabbat, the very fact that you can't just open the door of your fridge on Shabbat or not just put on the light, it is all there to remind you. Be amazed of electricity. Be amazed of the fact that there is a fridge which you can use and you can put your food in and it stays fresh. All these things. Remember one thing. Philosophers of science tell us constantly that we have got no clue why it is like that. Nobody ever explained to us why the sun goes up in the morning, goes under in the evening. We can tell you exactly what happens and how it happens. But the moment you start to ask the ultimate question of why, then we all live in total amazement. Religion is the art to live in amazement. Religion is a protest to take anything for granted in this world. And that was Mickey. Never taking anything for granted. Always to see something, I personally heard that many times from him, where he would say, look, the little things in life, the trivial matters. Abraham Joshua Heschel, one of the great American Jewish philosophers, used to say that the Jewish tradition exists out of making sure that every trivial matter is a matter of great kedusha, of great holiness. There are no trivial things in this world, because everything what takes place in the time and in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How can they be trivial? How can they be insignificant? But to learn that is an enormous problem. And Shabbat is the specific day on which we need to remind ourselves of this. And if you look around Lahavdil in non-Jewish philosophy, then you will find indeed that philosophers who were able to pick this up, and there were some very great ones, indeed constantly made that point. The wonder of this world. I don't know if I ever mentioned this before to you, but in that case I repeat myself. You know what a bracha is? A blessing which we make. Imagine you take an apple into your hands, and just before you put it into your mouth, somebody says, wait! Says, why? You're going to do something extremely dangerous. What's dangerous about eating an apple? There are hundreds of different dangers coming about. Who says that you can swallow it? Who says that your body can deal with it? Who says that it will make all the right moves so that to make sure that you get all the vitamins out of it and all the rest will leave you again? How do you know for sure it will happen? If one little thing will go wrong, it could explode you. One little matter will go the other way than we normally expect it to go, and everything will go wrong. To eat is dangerous. There's only one way to remind us how incredibly great it is that you and I can eat, drink, smell, breathe, whatever else it is by for a moment just to stop, just before we do the act, and say one very profound English statement. Wow! How is it possible? Now, my dear friends, for those who know Ivrit well, what is the Ivrit translation of the word wow? It's not wow. I tell you what it is. It is Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam shehakol niya bidbaro. That's our wow. Because for everything we need to say wow. But we say, let's say it a little bit more sophisticated than the English do. We will say, God, we are standing in total amazement. We need to say this. We shout it out, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. That's what real religious life is all about. But it's true. And I speak to myself as well. We often forget this. We make a bracha without even realizing anymore what we are doing. How many of us, including myself, are saying a bracha when we say, wow? One of the biggest problems of Jewish education today, that we get so used to saying wow, that it's meaningless. But if you look carefully, and you see what Chazal had in mind, and why they built these brachot, and why and how they stated these brachot, it was exactly for that very reason. And my friends, that's what Mickey stood for. It creates incredible joy, even in the most difficult moments. Joy is not pleasure. Joy is the act of doing something and feeling that you grow spiritually from the experience. Sorrow is when you do something and you feel that you descend, that you lose something of your spirit. One must live in fire. While I'm speaking, I remind myself that I read somewhere that a great Hasidic Rebbe once asked his Talmidim, what would you do if your house is put on fire, it's burning down? What would you save? And everybody up came as another answer. And the Rebbe said, you know what I would save? The fire itself. The fire itself is what makes us to live. The fire itself is what constantly makes us to be amazed, which makes us aware that we are walking, or that we should be walking, and not just walk around in this world, looking for opportunities without realizing that it is right in front of us. Das Ding an sich is here now at this moment. That's, I think, what is the meaning of the pasuk. As you all know, Tachat Asher Lo Avadata et Hashem Elokecha Besimcha. Since you did not serve God with joy, or betov levav meirov kol, from all the great things which He gave you, you are in trouble. Again, joy is not just a matter of pleasure. Pleasure is something totally different. Joy is the constant growing of what we are and what we should be. The constant opportunity of walking around. My dear friends, about this topic much more is to be said. But I just wanted to mention these words, because in many ways they describe who Mickey was. He was the man who walked around with a smile, not like you and I smile, but because he realized every moment of his life was a moment of das Ding an sich. He had the great opportunity of walking without ever really thinking about the ultimate two. And by that he became an example to all of us. Somehow it seems, for reasons I do not know, that they needed him more up there than here with us. Let us not forget who he was and what he still is for all of us, and make sure that because of that reason his aliyat neshama, his walking over there in Olam Haba, the constant coming closer to the Shekhinah, the spazieren of his neshama, is what we all should strive for in this little life which we live over here. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu give us the strength, the insight, and the purity of heart to do that. And may He bless Daniela and all her children and the whole family. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Cardozo, for your fascinating and inspiring speech. Thank you for finally teaching us how to walk. And now here, Jewish music, so Mike and David.
Those people have to go because they're Vedim or they can't stay for the music. Sorry, have to go. We will start in 2 minutes.
How are you?
Are you on sound?
Sorry?
Are you on sound now?
Yeah.
Are you recording?
It's fine. It's good.
Did you like the tape? Rolling Bernstein tape? Have you still got it? Or have you given it back? You think you still have it?
Sit down and enjoy.
Maybe double
there's two. Which one's the
Ladies and gentlemen, can you please be seated? Please. Danny, can you turn the lights down? Turn the lights down, just let's have 2 minutes.
Idiots indeed.
Okay. It's a great privilege and honour to be here this evening to share with you. Now, I'm not going to give the same sort of presentation that Rabbi Cardoza did. I haven't seen Rabbi Cardoza for 40 years since I was engaged at Yeshiva, so it's been wonderful seeing him and to see what a golden Torah he has become, and such a powerful speech that he gave today. But I'm going to take a different track this evening. I knew Mickey as a result of a family connection. My nephew married his sister, and besides the wonderful thing that Debbie came into the family, was also the fact that Mickey came with it. And really, you know, I'm at a loss. There was a famous poet who said that the flowering moments of the mind drop half their petals in our speech. I really can't, I find it very hard to talk about Mickey. We were soul brothers. On his occasions that he came to Manchester, we would spend hours talking about all manner of things. And because the flowering moments of the mind drop half their petals in our speech, we left speech and we went into the world of legal. What I want to do with you this evening, although my sessions can last up to 5 hours, we don't have 5 hours tonight. I'd just like to give a selection of some of the nigunim on different instruments that I recall Mickey singing with me, loving, and one or two stories, one humorous and one very reflective, which he loved, and I told him many, many times. At least two of the stories I'm going to tell you this evening. And please don't view this as a lecture. This is an interactive thing, especially for the men. I do expect you to help me by humming, clapping, or just, you should be in the room. Just one last thing. I'm very nervous standing here. So I ask your indulgence, please. You can do anything you want except talk. If you talk, it makes me nervous, and especially if you're playing the violin. A nervous violinist is the most excruciating experience in the world. Because if you're nervous, your fingers move a millicentimeter, and on the violin, that is an absolute disaster. So I hope you'll bear with me. What do I want to do this evening? Well, I do sessions around the world, and I call them a taste of heaven. And what do I need for a taste of heaven? I always tell the organisers, I need a circle of chairs, I need a l'chaim, or at least could I have some water to drink? I need a candle or reduced lighting, and my favourite instrument, the bouzouki. Well, we've got some other instruments. What's tonight? Tonight is really to share with you a taste of heaven, and with Mickey, because for Mickey, his spirit is still with me, and I'm not exaggerating. His smile, his earnestness, his honesty, his integrity, and I think this will come through the stories I'm going to share with you and the nigunim. I'd also like to welcome a good friend of mine. I was his shadchan, and his wife is here. They now live in Manchester. He's the best Irish drummer in the world, Alex. Pardon?
We live in Yerushalayim,
And they now live, and they've left our side. The colour was from Manchester, so Manchester bereft of her. And now they're in Yerushalayim, Kodesh, and they have helped marry off some of my kids. So how's that for Mid-Canadian? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you know, I was told I'm not going to give a lecture. I remember Reb Shlomo used to say, Reb Shlomo Kalhoff used to say, he said, when you learn in Gemara, you learn, please, can I have quiet? When you learn in Gemara, you say, Tonu Rabbanon, they learn, they said. Because you're talking about logical sequence of thinking. But he said in the Zohar, it often uses the verb, not to say, but he oposach, he opened. What I'd like to do this evening is to open my heart and your hearts, to remember Mickey, all that he stood for, and especially for me, and I hope this will come over in the course of the evening, is a constant inspiration. You know, there's one gematria I came up just before I came when I came from Manchester, and I thought immediately of Mickey. The gematria of Simcha, which Mickey personified, is the same as Or Olam, light of the world. And I thought, how fitting. I'm coming Erev Chanukah, which is light. And Or Olam, the light of the world, is Simcha. And in my mind, Mickey had such Simcha Sachayim. Everybody I speak to, and the Rav knew much better than me. He used to learn with him constantly. I only used to see him from time to time. He has such a Simcha Sachayim, and when you meet people with Simcha Sachayim, they're so real that it's contagious. So I hope some of that spirit will rub off onto you. Having said that spirit, I want to start the first nigun. I always start off an evening, wherever it is one of the early nigunim of Reb Shlomo. He had just 2 words. Ruach Hashem. Could I have some water, please? please don't clap at the end. The only way you show your appreciation is you join in and give me energy so that we can... No, please don't clap. Right. You ask people about Mickey, he was multifaceted. But one of the things which everybody talks about is his chesed. And there's a nigun which has been buzzing around it's the top of the table pops for the last year. We say in davening, in Hallel, Hoidu Lashem Kitoi, Ki La'olam Chasto. So the normal explanation is, give thanks to the Rebbeinu Shalom, for his chesed, La'olam Voed, is forever. Just last year I came across an Al-Sheikh, which, wow, this was a wow experience. He gives shut like this. Hoidu Lashem. Give thanks to Rebbeinu Shalom. Ki la'olam chasto. His chesed is for the world. It's not for himself. The chesed is ki la'olam chasto. And everything that we learn in Jewish thought about the Rebbeinu Shalom, it's not meant to remain a philosophical idea, we believe X, Y, Z. If we're told something about the attributes of the Rebbeinu Shalom, we're meant to emulate it. Hashem does chesed for others, then follow suit. And what bitter nigun to start off this evening to describe Mickey is chesed for others. You know, what's a genuine chesed? And perhaps I don't want to tread on people's toes. But you know, Mickey, in sometimes walking around with his shorts and his kippah and short sleeves, was perhaps a greater chassid than many who have the externalities. I said, what's the definition of a chassid? It's a yud. How do you spell chassid? Ches samach yud dalet. Somebody suggested, I hope, as usual. Yes, right.
Over here.
Let's hope the bouzouki behaves. Oh, by the way, this is a bouzouki. Very apt for Hanukkah. It's Greek. It's got 8 strings. As the Chazal tell us, in Yemos HaMashiach, we will play instruments on 8 strings. In the time of the Beis HaMikdash, it was on 7. 8, it's Hanukkah and it's Greek. And please God, behind Hanukkah will be a 10 string. That's yet to come. Okay. So this is the nigun. I'm sure a lot of you do know it. Those of connoisseurs of good Jewish music obviously do know it already. So the words are extremely familiar, and you'll be saying them a lot in the next few days in Hallel. Hoidu Hashem, Kitov, Ki la'olam chasto. Let's take an example from Mickey. Let's show a bit more concern for other people. Anyway, this is the nigger. completely different. Mickey loved this instrument, the ocarina of South America. My drummer here says that if you feel you want to clap. You know, Chazal tell us the greatest Jewish musician who ever lived was David HaMelech. And David is spelled Dalet Vov Dalet. And it also means Doid, the friend of every man. David HaMelech, every day of his life he had challenges. The book of Tehillim is a diary of his internal struggles. But Doid He's our friend, he gives us a helping hand because of his inspiration, often through music. He was able to uplift people who were shattered, as we all are from time to time, by the way that life throws challenges at us. And I don't know if you've ever noticed, I've made a special interest of David Melech because I've a vested interest in it. It's music, divine, celestial music David Melech has to play. I don't know if you've ever noticed, and the Gemara noticed, that sometimes we say Mizmor LeDavid, and sometimes, not so frequently, we say LeDavid Mizmor. So this is not, what I'm going to tell you now is not a Chassidish vault, which you can say, well, maybe, maybe not. This is a Gemara in Pesachim, I don't remember which stuff. The Gemara in Pesachim says, why does it say sometimes a Mizmor LeDavid? In fact, when I counted it last time, I think it's 29 times, Mizmor LeDavid. And only twice, I think, LeDavid Mizmor. Now listen what the Gemara says, amazing understanding of the human condition. David HaMelech, as you know only too well, was a person in his life was often beaten down by the arrows and slings of outrageous fortune, lived a stressful life, getting into a rut. Do I need to say any more? But like every human being with any sensitivity, he needed a way of escaping that. He needed inspiration. So when it says Mizmor LeDavid, says the Gemara, how did he do it? There are many ways you can do it. One of them is learning Torah, definitely. But sometimes when the pain perhaps is so deep, you need something which can perhaps go right inside, beyond your kishkas. So the Gemara says, he used the most intangible of all the arts to lift him up. Mizmor, through a nigun, LeDavid, David became inspired. And David HaMelech, who is the friend of every man, most of the time he was in that situation. He wasn't high. He wasn't inspired. He needed the means, LeDavid, to become inspired. But occasionally, says the Gemara, LeDavid, he was already high. He was full of inspiration. He was full of joy. And to quote the quote I mentioned before, what do you do when you have tremendously deep emotions? The flowering moments of the mind drop half their petals in speaking. So what do you have to do if you want to give expression to the deepest feelings? LeDavid, when he was high, Mizmor. It's the good old nigunim which were able to give expression. I feel so strongly for Mickey, I feel his presence here, that I hope that these nigunim that I'm going to play tonight will give expression to really the inspiration that he gave me. Let's change the mood totally. Let me tell you one of my funniest stories of my travels around the world, which I connect with Mickey. But before we do that, there's a nigun connected with it. I had the first time, I was the last person to play with Reb Shlomo Kalbach in Manchester 2 days before he died. And at that amazing concert, he played this nigun, and I'm going to tell you the story about this nigun. It's one of my funniest stories that I tell. But let's do the nigun for. The words are very appropriate. Here we're in Yerushalayim. The words are, Meheiro, let it be soon. Meheiro, Meheiro, Hashem Elokeinu. Please God, let it be soon. Meheiro, Meheiro, Hashem Elokeinu. Meheiro, Meheiro, Hashem. Oid Yishama, Yorei Yehuda, Ulechutzaish, Yerushalayim. He sang that nigun. And that really got into me. But let's play it first and I'll tell you what happened to it. Can you hear at the back? Niggun. Now listen to this amazing story. The concert was in Manchester. A few months later, I'm invited to a town in England called Bristol, which is really off the beaten track, Jewish-wise. It's on the border of Wales, a very small, assimilated community. For some reason, I was invited down there to do an evening of Jewish soul music. And I come into the hall, and everybody's sitting there, about 200 people, and they're all sitting there with their arms folded like that. How am I going to break the ice? You know, they say in business, you don't have a second chance to make a first impression. And it's very important how you begin. Anyway, I thought it'd been such a hit, this Niggun had been such a hit at the concert, I'd use this. So I started Mehera, Baruch Hashem, wonderful, wonderful. And in fact, right at the end, 3 hours later, people got up to dance to this Niggun. It was like a wedding, a Sidisha wedding. Now, in the break, there was one lady who came up to me and she said, Mike, she said, I can't stay for part 2 because I've got to take my Japanese friend home. Okay? She said, please don't take it personal. I have to leave. After the break, she stayed. And she, this lady, was the one who took all the women to a side and started dancing to this Niggun. So it was such a success, I called it the Bristol Niggun. I always try to associate a Niggun with a different place. Perhaps I'll have a Yerushalmi Niggun here tonight, who knows? Wait and see. The Rebbetzin of that community I had seen had recorded the evening. It was a 3-hour session, and on my scale it was an A+ evening. They don't always A+, but that was. So I phoned her up and I said, Rebbetzin, do you have a tape? Yes. She said, Mike, I want to tell you something. You know that lady who came up to you in the break and said she had to leave? I want to tell you something about her. Her husband is an ex-Anglican priest. I said, that's interesting. She said her mother died in Auschwitz. She is not involved in the Jewish community. She involves herself just with the refugees in the Bristol area. But she came that evening because it wasn't just religion, it was a bit of culture, it was about music, so she came. I want to tell you something. Her husband came to me this week and said to her, do you know that melody that Mike Tabor played at the end that my wife got up to dance to? We've been singing it all the time. Oh, we're dancing around the table to it. Rabbi, you know we don't know anything, we're not believing. Is there a possibility that we could have some lessons about Yiddishkeit? Oh, so I heard from Reb Shlomo you should also have holy chutzpah. I thought, right. I said, could you give me an address? So she gave me an address and I wrote her a letter and I said, I'd heard that you enjoyed the evening. Would you like a copy of the evening, including the Bristol Niggun? And I got back a most amazing letter. She wrote back and said, dear Mike, I was brought up in the shadow of Auschwitz and the Holocaust, of gloom, of despair. Never thought that anything in Yiddishkeit had anything at all to do with Simchas HaChaim. And here you float in from Manchester, 300 miles away, and you play one of these melodies. I just don't know what to say. Here's £10. Keep the rest of the money. Just send me the cassette. And that started a correspondence between us, which I'm not going to discuss the evening. So now I have, on my repertoire, the Bristol Niggun. I know it works. A few months later, and this is we get into the story that I want to share with you. A few months later, I'm invited by Seed organisation. Joe Grunfeld's a good friend of mine, also from Gateshead, at the same time as Rabbi Cardoza. We were all the same gang. So Rabbi Joseph Grunfeld invited me to do an evening in Edgware in London for Seed. So, you know, as I told you before, you don't have a second chance to make a first impression. You've got a new group. What will break the ice? I started off with Mahela. Right? Great. And it worked. And then I went on to do whatever I had. And just at the end of the evening, I said to everybody tries, search in life for meaning, to do something worthwhile. And everybody has to find their own derech, just as Mickey did. My derech is through the world of nigun. Nigunim, I know their power. So I said to them, ladies and gentlemen, you know, I often go to a place to do a concert, and I introduce new nigunim, and then people get very inspired, and then I go away, and then they go home, and then they begin to suffer from nigun withdrawal symptoms, and they can't remember how it goes. I have had people coming to them literally suffering. So out of the goodness of my heart, and I'm going to give one to you all at the end, I set up a nigun gemach, which has got my phone number on. People who hear a nigun and can only remember the first note but not the second, can now phone my house to 11 o'clock at night, and I will help. Okay, so it's a nice thing, and I gave them out the evening. I'll give these out for you. Okay. That was on the Sunday in Edgware. That was the Sunday on Edgware. On the Friday, I get a phone call and goes like this. Hello, is that Mike Tabor? I said, yes. As I said, I don't know if you remember me. I don't know if you remember me. I'm Dave. Was at the seed evening. I said, how could I forget you, Dave? You're the guy from the East End with a Cockney accent who was sitting opposite me. What's the problem, Dave? He said, Mike, that Bristol niggin is absolutely blooming marvellous. He said, I've been singing when I go in the street. I've been singing it when I'm at home. I sing it when I go to work. So what's the problem? He said, I've forgotten it. Please, Mike. So I said, okay, Dave. To my word, I did. I said, Dave. He said, why do you want this niggin? Why is it so important to you? He says, I'm coming to Manchester for Shabbos, and I'm staying with a Rabbi Stanton, and I want to introduce. I say, Rabbi Stanton, he lives round the corner to me. Why don't you come to my house, Motzi Shabbos? I have a Malava Malka, and I'll teach it to you proper. He said, Mike, I'll be there. So Dave comes round, Motzi Shabbos, have a few friends round. He said, Mahero. It's wonderful, singing with the Slavas. And I wondered, who is this person? And I remember looking at the clock, it was midnight. And midnight's a special chatzos. So I said to Dave, tell me, what do you do for a living? He said, Mike, don't worry. He said, I'm an undercover VAT inspector based in Bethnal Green. Based in Bethnal Green. He said, don't worry, I'm not here on business, because there were a number of businessmen there, but there was the others. So I have a wonderful story, okay, about the VAT man and the niggin. Okay, what's this got to do with Mickey? That's the funny side of the story. I was invited to tell, to a Sheva Brothers, and there's a young Ben Torah there just getting married. And it was a person, Rabbi Beryl Cohen in Manchester, made the Sheva Brothers, and he asked me, Mike, would you tell something, a bit of humour, a bit of whatever? So I told the story, and then I turned to the Chosson. I said, you know, I, Mike Tabor, full of paradox. On the one hand, jolly and this and that, but I'm also, there's a deeper side to it, this story as well. I said, I spoke to Dave about his job. What does he do? He works in the VAT office, and he told me a most amazing, any VAT officers here, by the way? And he told me an amazing thing, which has inspired me to this day. He said his job in the VAT office, those of you know, VAT means the value added tax. It's not the same as inland revenue. The value added tax people in England, and I'm sure it's the same elsewhere, have absolute and complete power. They can destroy